Hey guys, so this week I wanted to make my video on the rights of recipients of mental health services that are children. So my field instructor, a couple other of the ladies from on-site, and myself all attended this training this week, sponsored by the Department of Health and Human Services, don't mind my cat, um, that addressed some recent changes to what children's rights are in the state of Maine when they're receiving mental health services. So this training was really about education. It was about how best to advocate for clients who are children. It was about knowing what the laws say and how those have changed. And it was also about tearing down some of that stigma around rights of children. So one of the things that was explained to us is that oftentimes when children transition into adult services, there's this like, well, now I have all these freedom and I have all these basic human rights. And the way it was explained today is that those basic human rights are afforded to everyone, regardless of age. So those rights may be adapted more when you're an adult, but you still have those basic rights when you're a child. Rights to things like having somewhere safe to be, a safe environment to be in. Rights to things like being able to say no if something feels uncomfortable or pushing back on why you're being provided a certain service. Now, they did kind of back things up with the fact that children can enter treatment with parental permission to do so, but they discussed how the children should really be part of the treatment planning process. So the first presenter went into what an IFSP is, which is an individualized service plan, and basically discussed how children can be part of that process. So one of the things they challenged us and encourage us as providers to do is look at our treatment plans and see how they're written and see if it's understandable for a child. Now, I myself have experienced reading very detailed, very specific, very, overly explained treatment plans, and I've also had the experience of reading treatment plans that were loosely put together that didn't really give you any clear direction on the goals that you were supposed to be working on. So one of the suggestions was that not only do we make it easy for the child to understand, but that we work in collaboration with the family and they really understand with what the treatment goals are for the child. So they discussed this practice that some local agencies have been using, where they actually provide a copy of the treatment plan to the child, separate from the treatment plan that they provide to the parents. And if anything needs clarification, they break that down for the children in the treatment plan. The second half of the presentation was also really interesting because they brought in the Maine disability rights advocate to talk about, outpatient services and educational services that kids receive and how that process works if a child feels that their rights have been violated. Now, they encourage us to really take that seriously. I think sometimes as providers, when we work with really challenging cases, we tend not to maybe consider what the child is saying as carefully as we could. So one of the things today was about really listening to them, and if they have a grievance against the service that's provided, partnering with Maine Disability Rights Advocacy is really one way to mediate that situation between the child, the family, and providers. They did touch on our role as mental health providers in school and education-based provisions as well. So one of the things that they discussed is the fact that under federal law, there is no policy that says that you can seclude a child from education. And the whole concept of a free public education needs to be honored regardless of someone's capacity to learn. So we talked a lot today about how it's not that that child needs to adapt to the learning environment, it's that that learning environment needs to adapt to the child. So I found that really important because sometimes I think we discredit that a little bit, that we think that this child doesn't fit the mold or they're acting out in class, and we hear that a lot. But what are we doing as providers to ensure that that educational environment is really supporting them? So I thought it was really cool that there's only three. Well, the not cool part is there's only 3 disability rights advocates that are pro bono attorneys in the state of Maine. But the speaker, who is one of those three providers, discussed how he's more than willing to take some of the language in IEP meetings, take some of the evaluations that need to be discussed in IEP meetings, and break them down for parents and write letters so that they really know what they're going in to advocate for and why they're going in to advocate for those accommodations for their student, their child. So I thought that was really cool how he took the time to discuss with us how he takes every case seriously and he's willing to meet these families at their level. So what I really got out of this experience was the fact of reminding myself that children do have basic human rights always, and that's something I've always been big on, but that we need to be willing to more so work with them when we're doing family work and really include them in these processes that involve their treatment. They should know where they stand, they should know why they're being provided services, and they should really be part of that treatment planning process, because if they aren't behind their goals, then we're not going to see progress. So I found that to be a really unique opportunity that I got to have on site this week. And my question this week for you guys is, have you had any opportunities to look at the state regulations for children's or adults' rights in your state and in your local community? So if we could have a discussion on that, that would be awesome. I'm curious to see how that varies state to state. Have a great week, everyone.